So you have made two fan films based on Detroit Become Human. You've got an upcoming project on Fallout. You've got Live Scream and Live Screamers, so it's pretty clear you're into video games. Um, what is it about the medium that you love to work in?
Yeah, video games definitely seem to be the common denominator with a lot of my work. I think that, queer representation has kind of become another, common denominator. And that is true of live screamers as well. And horror, interestingly, is not. I mean, sometimes I do horror, sometimes I don't. The Detroit fan films are absolutely romance films above anything. So very different genre to work in, although also an exercise in tension. So if you've written horror, you might be able to write romance, because it's basically, instead of, waiting for somebody to get murdered, you're waiting for two people to kiss. But as far as what draws me to video games, I was a very late addition to video game fandom. I didn't play games until I was 21 because I wasn't really allowed to have them as a kid. Not anything big and puritanical and, strong. It was just that they were expensive and my family never wanted to buy them for me. I got camcorders and computers and editing software and stuff instead, and they're like, okay, we're not spoiling you more by also giving you video games and PlayStations. So I got into adulthood, and I was very fascinated by the medium. This is actually a very good question, because now I have to think about why I actually like video games, particularly because I would say 90% of my video game consumption comes through watching other people play. So I can't even say that it's the interactive element, because so much of what I absorb out of video games is through a second party. But I quite like the stories a lot of times. And I think that it's kind of the Wild West in a weird way. Like, because video games are such a new medium, there's things that you can do with them that have been done 30 or 40 years ago in film, and they're old hat in movies and through other visual mediums. But if you try to do them in video games, it's novel. And so I think that one of the appeals for me of making the live scream movies, and even the Detroit movies too, being like this live action, video game movie, romance story. These are sort of ways that video games have influenced film to make film novel, because we've never really seen video games done well in the cinematic medium. Video games are starting to become successfully more cinematic, but cinema is not successfully really becoming inspired by video games, as the Uncharted movie and even recently the what was that other video game movie that flopped recently? Oh, Mortal Kombat kind of prove that it's like we keep hoping for that great video game movie, and we're still not there yet. We're holding out for The Last of Us HBO series. Maybe that'll be it. If anything will succeed, it's that. And if that doesn't succeed, it's like, okay, like, what are we doing? But I like to say that my movies are decent. So I think with Detroit Evolution and Live Scream kind of show that you just have to approach it in the right way, and you have to stay focused on character and story and not get too distracted by the fact that there's interactive elements or that there's this pre-existing universe or pre-existing way that, people want to insert themselves into the universe. Just focusing on really interesting people doing interesting things. People, when they make video game movies, get very distracted by that for some reason. And I don't know if it's just because people who are making video game movies just don't understand video games or their appeal, but I think a lot of times it is the story, and a lot of times it's the characters, and it's the mechanics and the situations that you get put in, and the combination of the music and the interactivity and the visuals and everything that makes it really badass in a way that film hasn't kind of become familiar with in the same way.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I think the gaming, especially, I think it's just so vast. It's just so big that you try to encompass that in a 90-minute film, and it's not, doesn't come off the same way.
I think that that's very true too. I mean, so many video games are so fucking long these days. I mean, like Red Dead Redemption 2 is what, 60 hours just to get to the main storyline. How are you going to condense that into a 2-hour movie if you're trying to make a direct adaptation? And the answer is you can't. What you should do if you're making a Red Dead Redemption story is you should make an original character in that universe and tell a story that's sort of peripherally related to things that the fans find familiar, and play in that world rather than trying to adapt the literal thing that was not made for film, that was not intended for that. And I think the same way about book adaptations too. You know, so many people get so angry when every little detail from a book isn't included in a movie, and it's like, well, they can't do that. Like, some things have to be cut. You got to adapt for the medium. And yeah, it's funny, even to this day, video games really struggle to make that transition to film. Even though we've come close so many times.
Yeah, no. So that was actually one of my next questions. Was I wrote, despite the fact that video game movies are often met unfavorably, are there any out there that inspire you? Are there any out there that you really enjoy? Because I love the medium, to be honest with you. Even like the bad ones, there's usually one or two ideas, and then you go, that was pretty cool, you know.
I think the new Hitman movie was the one that, like, in the last 5 minutes of it, I was like, you know, I'm almost on board with this. Like, it's not Hitman. Like, they threw Hitman out the window, but as a standalone movie about super soldier spy clones and stuff, it was decent. And so towards the end, I was like, okay, I'm kind of digging this. But yeah, you know what? I actually quite like the Resident Evil movies, and I know most Resident Evil fans will drag me across coals for saying that. But that's just like, you got to separate them from the game and like treat them as a completely different franchise. I think that as just action horror movies, they're pretty decent. They're very entertaining. And I really like Mila Jovovich and Ali Larter and, you know, a lot of the people who are in those movies too. So I used to go to see those in the theater. So in terms of video game movies, I think those almost struck at least the right balance to have 6 of them made. I mean, like, in terms of financial success, and, you know, people went to go see them and enjoyed them enough. That's kind of where, you know, people kind of need to ride that line without necessarily pissing off the existing fan base as badly as the Resident Evil movies did. You want to maybe find some sort of middle ground where it's like you're appeasing the people who actually like the source material while also being entertaining to new audiences. And the Fallout series they're working on at Amazon, I'm also hopeful for, it will kind of walk that line of existing in the Fallout world, but not necessarily being married to the canon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually watched the newest Resident Evil, the reboot movie the other night, and it does exactly what you're talking about. It does. It's mostly fan service, and then it leaves out the horror portion of it. It's just very like, this is what happens, and this is what happens, and this is what happens, and it just totally misses the idea of making the movie. All right, so let's keep going here. What are your favorite games of all time?
Well, mentioning Fallout, Fallout 4 is probably it. And that's why I've been working on this Fallout animated Machinima series for literally 6 or 7 years. At this point, like, it has been in development in some capacity for that long. Because I really like the characters in that game. Again, like, I want to explore more with I want to spend more time with the characters in that game after the events of Fallout 4. Surprisingly, Detroit Become Human is actually not in my top 5. I really like Read 900. I really like what the fandom has done with Detroit Become Human. The source material, I'm a little iffy on. There's entire storylines in that game that I find kind of sluggish to play through. In terms of Quantic Dream games that I really like, I much prefer Heavy Rain. I think that Heavy Rain is a much more consistently entertaining game, and is also probably the game that got me into video games, that really pushed me into being a gamer. So I have a lot of fondness for Heavy Rain. I have a deep fondness for Nier Automata. Love that game. I love anything meta, really. So Nier Automata being rife with all these alternate endings and like secret discoveries and sorts of things, is really awesome. Tales from the Borderlands is one of my favorite narrative games. It's so funny and so aesthetic. Very good performances for Troy Baker and Laura Bailey and Nolan North and the whole gang. What is my other? So yeah, Fallout 4, Heavy Rain, Nier Automata, Tales from the Borderlands. There's definitely like another one that sits in my top 5. I have been playing the shit out of Cyberpunk 2077, actually. I'm on my second playthrough of it. I probably put about 200 hours into that game at this point. So I really do quite like Cyberpunk. Warts and all. I think it's got a really good cast of characters, really great companion quest, side quest plot lines, and actually a really good main quest too, a really good main storyline. And you get to have Keanu Reeves in your head commentating on everything you do. Like, I think that gets a lot of points from me.
I got about 5 minutes into that one. I think I got to the nightclub and then that was it. But Fallout 4 is definitely in my top 5 as well. I love that game. That was one of those ones where I would be driving somewhere, and I live up in Massachusetts, so it's very
cool.
close to home. So I'd be driving somewhere, and especially in the fall when everything's like gone, in the winter or whatever, it just leaves coming off the trees and stuff like that, I'd be like, this is really close. This looks a whole lot like that, and I'd be haunted to go back to it at the end of my day. All right, so what is your dream project?
Wow. I waffle on that, because there's some that I've had since I was a kid. And then there's always kind of like whatever in my mind I think my next project is going to be. So like I would have said a couple years ago that Live Screamers was my dream project, right? Because it was next on the list. But if we're talking like lit off, like sky's the limit, I would love to do a Godzilla movie. I think that's of any franchise, any big IP that I would love to be conscripted for. Marvel, Star Wars, whatever, even though my mother would love for me to direct a Star Wars movie because she has a Star Wars room in her house and I was raised in the world of Star Wars. I think Godzilla would be so cool because there's never been a female Godzilla director, not in, 55, 60 years that it's been around. And I don't even think in any like the spinoff, like the Toho films or like the Mothra movies or anything like that. And I think that that's an interesting opportunity to tell some Godzilla stories that maybe haven't been told before. And I want to do something with Godzilla that's like goofy and very unusual. Like I either want to do an all kaiju movie with no humans in it, like an Ancient Wars where a bunch of Godzillas fight like a bunch of Kongs. Like they kind of alluded to that in Godzilla versus Kong. And I was like, that's a more interesting movie than this one is. I want to go watch that one instead. And so like I would love that, where it's like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, or not Dawn of the Planet, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but with kaiju. And so like, yeah, you have like a couple humans maybe here and there, cut that, just focus on like kaiju communicating with each other and having culture and having a society and then fighting other kaiju. Like that's a cool movie. And then the other like Godzilla concept I have, which is total flip side, is coming of age story where a teen girl discovers like a baby Godzilla and starts secretly like raising it in her bathtub, and like high school hijinks happen, but also there's this Godzilla that it's like Clifford but with Godzilla. I don't know where I'd go with it, but I think it would be different, and I think Haley Steinfeld should star in it.
Perfect.
just some sort of like goofy like Lady Bird Edge of 17 movie, but like put a Godzilla in it, and I think that would be a lot of fun. So yeah, no, that like some sort of completely out there like Godzilla kaiju movie would be hella fun. So that's probably my dream project.
I can see that. I'm all for that. That sounds fun. So you designed a bunch of the levels for, actually I think you designed all of them for Live Scream, right?
Yeah, it was just me. Now, granted, I bought a lot of like the models and that sort of thing, but all the set building and all the programming and stuff I had to do from scratch.
Yeah, does that object coding, does that come natural to you? Or, and have you, the other question I had for you on that one is, have you designed any playable games?
No, I have not designed any playable games. It's an easy question. This was my first time with Unreal back in 2018 when I was doing live stream. And so I was mostly just like brute forcing my way through it with YouTube tutorials. Luckily, Unreal Engine makes it very easy to do programming without knowing a programming language, because they have an alternative to C++ called Blueprint, which is like a WYSIWYG kind of thing, like a what you see is what you get kind of layout, where you essentially create a little box that says like play animation, and then you do a little arrow out of it and you say, this is the animation that I want to play when I hit the F key. And you just test it, and it's really easy to go from there once you have like a screenshot of what somebody else did, through YouTube or something, and you can just copy kind of their process rather than having to sit there and figuring out like a coding language that's all just text. So I would say that Unreal comes naturally because it's so user friendly, and because there's so much support out there through Unreal and Epic Games themselves, and the support that they have created for the engine, but also fans and other creators doing a lot of tutorials and a lot of sharing of the knowledge of how they achieve things in the program. So yeah, I found that I'm sure that Unity and Cry and a lot of other engines have similar support systems and similar capabilities. I just thought Unreal was the easiest one for my brain, and also kind of matched up what I wanted to do and had the assets that I wanted for it.
Awesome. All right. So the first movie has a ton of references to the horror games, PT, Resident Evil, Under the Eight Pages. What can we expect those same kinds of references in the new movie, or is there a whole host of new ones?
I would say that the new film doesn't really tread any old ground. I think that there's a few references to like the previous film, but mostly this new film revolves around being pretty much a straightforward Resident Evil homage, because you have this group of people going into a haunted mansion. There's puzzles, there's weird architecture, there's a monster that's lurking around that's kind of chasing them like, Mr. X. So there's a lot of Resident Evil in it, but there's still some other echoes of other games, some of which are a little surprising, some of which aren't necessarily even horror games, but are games that have become more popular in the past 4 years since the original live stream came out. But I was very much inspired by game mechanics again this time, and some of the challenges that all of our characters are put through. Because much like the original film of live stream, instead of having the original film had every level was a different game. It was basically a completely different game homage. In Live Screamers, it's all the same game. It's all, the level never changes. They're just going to different parts of the house, and different parts of the house have different, challenges and different game mechanics that they have to kind of reckon with, and different traps and things. So what inspired those game mechanics were other games, but I would say that it's not like they walk into a room and suddenly they're in PT, or they walk into a room and they're suddenly in Minecraft. It's kind of like you'll see a little bit here that's like, oh, that's like Dead by Daylight, or you'll see a little bit here that's like Until Dawn. Those are a couple of the ones that I think I could say. Anything else is probably spoilery, because there's some games that if I say what they are, you'll immediately be like, oh wow, you're gonna put that in the movie? Okay.
What gave you the idea to sort of go into this like found footage horror kind of movie?
Well, what's funny is the first movie I ever made was actually a found footage horror fan film. So it kind of just covered the whole gamut, and it was also slightly gay in retrospect too. So I mean, I guess it runs the gamut of everything I ever ended up becoming. When I was 15, I did something called the Blair Toaster Project for school. We had to do a toaster film. We had to do some sort of film that had a toaster in it. That was the prompt. And so I went out into my friend's backyard that looked like the woods, and we were hunting the Blair toaster. And I had my camcorder. This was 2007, so I mean there was no digital, nothing. So I had my camcorder and I was recording it like Blair Witch Project, and I was totally in character, like we gotta find the burnt bread and the toast, just like all these omens. And so I cut together this thing, and it's still to this day hilarious. It's on my YouTube channel. The fans of Octopunk actually have quite a fondness for it, to the point where they actually got me to work on a sequel to it, which is coming out in June on YouTube. It is simply called Blair Toaster, because of course it is.
Yeah.
With a 2 as the S. Yeah, it's great. The key art was also fun. It's all like spooky and dark woods, and then you have like this toaster and just lying on its side in the middle of the woods. It's great. So that was kind of the origins. But in terms of where did live stream come from? Just money. Like honestly, I made live stream, I mean, the ultimate budget, once you included like marketing and film festival expenses and all that sort of stuff, ended up being a few grand. But the out-of-pocket expense of production was only $1,500. And I've made shorts. I had made shorts up till that point that were more expensive than that. These days, I can't make a short for less than 10 grand. So, $1,500 to make a feature, that's wild, particularly because like the actor got paid, and I didn't have to exploit anybody. Like it wasn't shady or anything. Everything was really safe. Everything was paid for. It was just a lot of DIY free labor on my own time and my own part. And so I think that it was a combination of the passion of watching other people play games and the passion for horror games in general, also combined with just the fact that the idea for live stream played to all of my strengths at the time and all of my lack of resources at the time, while also telling, this story that I wanted to tell. It was just like this lightning in a bottle sort of situation where at the time, I couldn't afford to hire a cinematographer. So I was shooting everything myself, and I'm not a great cinematographer. Like I can shoot okay, but I felt like cinematography was holding my work back up to that point. Obviously, live stream doesn't really have cinematography. It's all on a webcam like this. So I was able to remove one of the elements that was detracting from my work by not having to have cinematography be this focal point of this film. So yeah, it played to my strengths. It ignored my weaknesses. It was cheap. It was the story that I really wanted to say. It talked about how it gave reverence to something that I felt wasn't being appreciated enough at the time, which was, why do people watch other people play video games? So many people were boggled by that at the time, and still are to this day a little. So yeah, it was just lightning in a bottle. And, I knew from pretty much the jump that I wanted to make a sequel to it. I wanted to make it multiplayer. And I knew live streamers was going to be a thing all the way back in 2018. It took a little while for me to figure out what I actually wanted live streamers to be about. I had to kind of go live in that world a little bit myself for a while, and then come back and then have things to say. And so that's why I think that I'm drawn to doing a sequel and drawn to going back into the sort of found footage world, because it's really resonates with just the stories that I want to tell at the time.
Your cast includes Halloween Kills Michael Smallwood, and just a ton of just fantastic horror-oriented people. What is it like to have all those people working with you on that production?
What's funny is I'm just really lucky to have really dope friends. Michael Smallwood's one of my best friends. He lives here in Charleston with me. He's actually coming over tomorrow morning to play a pigeon dating simulator with me again on stream.
Pigeon dating simulator?
Okay, so Hatful Boyfriend might actually be my fifth favorite game because it is half pigeon dating sim, half pigeon murder mystery. And it's amazing. I highly recommend it. It sounds ridiculous, and it is, but it's so charming. And watching Michael react to it has been so entertaining. The first 2 hours is already on my YouTube channel. We played it last week. But yeah, Michael has collaborated with me 9 times at this point. This is our 10th collaboration together. He's been in almost all my movies since 2019, if not all of them. And I've helped him produce his own movie, What a Beautiful Wedding, which is an incredible short that's going to premiere on the festival circuit very soon. And so Michael is just a great person, and I'm just very fortunate to have him in my life, both as a friend and as somebody who has a very, very, up and coming career in the film industry, but also specifically the horror film industry. And it was also very weird, as an aside, to go see Halloween Kills, which was the #1 movie in America at the time, and go see it with him in the theater. And like when that opening scene, like in the modern day, comes on, he's the first voice that's in the movie. Like, he has the first line after the credits, and I look at him like, wait, you opened the movie? And then he's like, keep watching. and then we see him, and then he goes up to like the bar and talks to the bartender. I'm like, you're the POV character in the first scene in this movie. And he's just like, yeah. And I was like, that's wild. and like, as well, it was also kind of funny and weird to watch him get murdered by Michael Myers on screen, and then just sort of like look back and then look at the screen and then look back and be like, this is so weird. But yeah, and then a lot of the newcomers we have as well in the cast, at least newcomers to the Octopunk, family. Evan Michael Pierce is hilarious, incredible improv. Naoma Sanchez, only 18 years old, and still in high school, but like carries the camera like an absolute, professional. Everybody who is, in their 30s on the cast is like, I couldn't have done that when I was 18. You want to see my acting when I was 18. Like, I wouldn't have gotten the part, not a chance. We've also got Kobe Oram, who is just so fun and such a good fit for his very sort of like likable, goofy, character Taylor. Anna Lynn is so bubbly and so funny. Like, she's an incredible comedian, so she's great for Zelda. And who am I for? Oh, Chris Trindade, of course, playing John. He's on his 3rd collaboration with me. So we've gotten very familiar with, building characters together. Let me make sure there's nobody I forgot. There's those 4, and then Kobe, and then, how can I forget? One of my besties, MJ Slide, as Dice. I don't think anybody has done more internal work to bring their character to life than MJ. I mean, they are doing so much homework right now to try to, bring this character to life, to learn their lines, to understand Dice's world. They're just such a great collaborative partner and great friend. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is like, I have very good actors, and I love the casting process. I love discovering people. I love giving people opportunities, and I love creating a group of people that have chemistry together. But at the end of the day, like, a lot of these people are just friends, and it's really cool to be able to include the people that you value in your journey in making art, that it's not just about like bringing a bunch of random people together and saying goodbye at the end of the day. It's like, I wouldn't do this project if I couldn't bring my people up with me,
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. And I have one question left, but my guess is you probably won't be able to answer it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Is there a chance we'll see Scott in any capacity?
I will say that Gunnar Willis is not in the film. That doesn't mean that you don't find out what happens to him. So I will say that there is closure in regards to actually more than one of the characters that were in live Scream. So you get a little bit of a hint of like what ended up happening to some of the characters from live Scream.
Very cool. Michelle, thank you so much.